Om Sarashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Good. Be seated, please. Parameshwara. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahavidyan Karavavahayi Tejasvi Navadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahayi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Good. Welcome back. Nice to see you all. Welcome also to the many students attending this class online. We continue. We're in the midst of a very powerful section of the Uddhava Gita, where in our last class, Sri Krishna gave what we could call scathing criticism of the futility of finding perfect peace and contentment and happiness through purely worldly pursuits. And the criticism is well-founded, as you know very well. The metaphor he didn't give, but we've used many, many times. It's like the lady looking for her necklace in the bedroom, in the living room, upstairs, downstairs, inside, outside. She's looking all over. She's so diligent, looking for it, looking in all the wrong places. So this is the basis for Sri Krishna's scathing criticism, and that is, if you want perfect peace and contentment, why are you bothering going to Starbucks, going to the mall? Why not, as we did this morning, sit and meditate? Or why not let Sri Krishna guide us to make that discovery of the true source of contentment and peace within? So, with that introduction, we continue with more scathing criticism, but a different orientation. So let's see that now. Can I please? Yeah, thank you. Last week, I noticed that I used a different raga for chanting. We have used, there's a convention, and certain ragas seem to fit certain scriptures more. Bhagavad Gita has its own. I use a different one for Upadesha Sahasri. I used that one incorrectly for Uddhava Gita, so let me return to a more conventional raga for chanting this. Atrapi karma nam kartur, atrapi karma nam kartur, aswatantriyam cha lakshyate, aswatantriyam cha lakshyate, bhoktush dukkha sukha bhoktush cha dukkha sukha. Usually it's sukha dukkha, and that's why I'm stuck. Bhoktush cha dukkha sukha yoho, bhoktush cha dukkha sukha yoho, konvarto vivasham bhajet, konvarto vivasham bhajet. Unusual to see it, dukkha sukha. Anyway, so Sri Krishna continues with api, also. Karmanam kartuhu, for those who are engaged in worldly activities, and that means specifically trying to find perfect peace and contentment through worldly pursuits. What about them? Swatantriyam cha lakshyate. You can lakshyate, you can easily understand that they are aswatantriyam. Swatantra means independent, not controlled by anyone or anything. Means that you're free to do whatever you want to do. Of course, Sri Krishna observes here that you can't do whatever you want to do. You have aswatantriyam, the absence of freedom to do whatever you want. And let's just understand that properly. Without an airplane, can you flap your arms enough? You get the point that no, of course not. You are physically limited. Your physical powers are limited. Your mental powers are limited. Do you think that would affect how successful we can be in gaining happiness and contentment through worldly pursuits? Of course, it's a big issue. Also, your resources are limited. How much money you have I can't say in the bank anyway. By the way, you don't have any money in the bank. It's all numbers in a computer. I don't know if there's some money in the bank, but certainly not all the money. Anyway, also, so you have limited resources. There are a number of obstacles that you will meet in trying to find perfect peace and content. For example, competition. People competing for the same limited resources. And for example, at work, if you and somebody else are vying for the same advancement, so there can be competition at work. Other obstacles, sometimes governmental rules create problems. I know when we wanted to build our ashram here, we had to conform to a lot of local township rules about how to build, what can be built, what can't be built, and some of that was an obstacle. We faced many obstacles as a result of those governmental laws. Probably the biggest obstacle is your karma. That is, from past lives, you carry with you today the effects of those bad karmas committed in prior lives, and those effects will take place at some point through your life. They'll take place by creating more obstacles. This explains why no matter how hard you try, no matter how smart you are in designing your approach, there are still obstacles unanticipated obstacles that can arise. And it's specifically those obstacles, the unexpected, unanticipated ones, that we can attribute to karma. So, with all these obstacles, how will you gain perfect peace and contentment through worldly pursuits, since you are aswatantriyam? You're not in control. And further, bhoktuhu sukha dukkha yoho. Therefore, you will be an experiencer. You will experience dukkha and sukha. And I think the reason for the reverse direction is the emphasis now is on dukkha. Dukkha, sad, what you don't want to experience. Sukha is what you want to experience. So you will end up experiencing not only the happiness that you seek, but you'll end up experiencing dukkha. And finally, Sri Krishna concludes, Ko kaha nu artaha. It's a little idiomatic. What's the use? Vivasham bhajet. If you are vivasham, if you are controlled, if you are not free to exercise all your powers and do anything you want, if you are not completely free, how can you possibly dream of gaining perfect peace and contentment through worldly pursuits? Now, there's a nice sequence that Sri Krishna has going right here. So suppose you think, okay, I understand that I have many limitations, but if I'm smart enough, I can I can outsmart all the obstacles. I can work within my limitations just by being clever enough, or in some cases by being devious enough, which is a problem. So let's see how Sri Krishna approaches this. Is it possible to outsmart all the obstacles and work within your limitations? Sri Krishna says, na dehi nam sukham kinchata, na dehi nam sukham kinchata, vidyate vidushamapi, vidyate vidushamapi, tata cha dukham mudhanam, tata cha dukham mudhanam, vratahankaranam param, vratahankaranam bhavam. Dehinam, for embodied people. He says, navidyate kinchit sukham. There is, and we have to add this idea, there is the possibility. There is a possibility of gaining nakinchit sukham, of not gaining any happiness at all. It's possible to live a life as a failure in all of your pursuits, vidusham api, even for those who are very intelligent, very wise, very skillful, or very deceitful, however you want to get your way. And Sri Krishna says it doesn't work that way. No matter how clever you are, you will never be able to design a perfect life. This is actually, I remember this very clearly in my 20s. I had graduated from engineering school. I'd moved to California, which I really wanted to live there, had a good job and a good future, and everything was good. And at that time, this is one of the problems of being in your 20s. I had the problem. I had the wrong notion, the naive notion, that if I was smart enough and worked hard enough, I could design the perfect life. Remember, I was trained as an engineer, so I was applying engineering to my life. I was going to engineer my life in such a way, solve all the problems so that I would have a perfect life. You can imagine it didn't take me long to figure out that approach was not going to work. And that's what Sri Krishna is saying here. No matter how smart you are, no matter how clever you are, you will never be able to engineer your way into having a perfect life. And then he gives it the flip side of the argument, tatacha, and in the same way, dukham mudhanam. And you have to bring down the kinchid vidyate. He says, being smart being smart doesn't guarantee you sukha. Being mudha, the opposite of smart, being mudha doesn't guarantee you dukkha. You see all the time people, somebody with a lottery ticket suddenly has $100 million. What did they do to deserve that? Nothing. So here's the point. Your success or failure in life is not in your hands. Period. So what is what is Sri Krishna's message here? Vrita ahankaranam param vrita. Entirely useless is ahankaranam, in a sense of pride, pride of learning. Many go for extensive education, which is wonderful, excellent, but like I did, with the naive notion that my degree in engineering would open up every door and allow me to engineer the perfect life, it is naive. So there's pride associated with education. And Sri Krishna says, what's the point of that pride? It's absolutely unfounded, because no matter how highly educated you are, you can still be a failure. And conversely, no matter how uneducated someone might be, they might be a huge success. Oh, yeah, just looking for an example. Bill Gates, if I remember right, dropped out of college, right? He is a college dropout. He did okay. All right. You get the point. Okay. Yadi praptim vighatam cha, yadi praptim vighatam cha, jananti sukha duhkayoho, jananti sukha duhkayoho, te pyadhana vidur yogam, te pyadhana vidur yogam, mrityurna prabhavet yata, mrityurna prabhavet yata. To get started, we have to jump around a lot in this verse. Yadi, if, next line, jananti, jananti, if they know. Even if they know what? End of the next line, yogam. Yogam here doesn't mean practicing yogasanas. Here, yoga is a means. By the way, words have many meanings. You look in an English dictionary, you'll find many meanings for a word. Similarly, the word yoga has a whole range of meanings. Here, it has the sense of a means to accomplish something. Yoga here, a means to accomplish something. So yadi, even if, jananti, even if they know the yogam, the means for what? The means for, first line, praptim, the means for gaining what? Sukha. Even if they know the means for gaining sukha, and even if they know the means for vighatam, removing dukkha. By the way, my translation of void is not correct, should be remove. So even if they know, so here, before we said you can't be smart enough. Suppose someone thinks, well, wait a minute, they're just not, in the prior verse, we said that you can't outsmart all your limitations and problems and difficulties. And suppose someone just imagines, well, you can be smarter than that. Whatever inadequate level of cleverness one might have, suppose you go much, much further and you become extraordinarily clever, extraordinarily smart. People think this Elon Musk is that kind of person. I don't know, but anyway, someone who has some extraordinary capacities. And perhaps he does, I don't know. But even then, you'll be surprised here, even then, te na jananti, they do not know a yogam, a means, They do not know. Uddha is an unusual adverb, clearly. They do not know clearly. What do they not know clearly? Mrityuhu na bhavet yatha. Yatha, the means, the way in which you can avoid death. No matter, so imagine someone who is just extraordinary in their ability to accomplish great things in life, and perhaps Elon Musk is a good example of such a person. So he is smart and successful and rich and all these good things. He knows how to skillfully apply means to get what he wants and to avoid what he doesn't want. Sri Krishna's observation, okay, is he skillful enough to have found a way to avoid death? That's what he says. So no matter how successful you are, something we all know very well. They say, you can't take it with you. Whatever you accomplish in this lifetime, in the moment of death, it is all taken away in just a moment. So Sri Krishna is pointing here to an irony. First, he says, it's pretty hard not pretty hard. He says it's impossible to gain perfect contentment and peace through purely worldly pursuits. Then he says, but even if you try and you have some extraordinary capacity to get more out of life than anyone else possibly can, even then, what will you do about death? Can't do anything about death. And this is a little ironic. We can do a lot of things to hasten our deaths, like driving your car at 120 miles an hour, etc. But notice the things we can do to extend our lifetimes are fairly limited, right? No matter what you do, if you live the most healthy lifestyle possible, you might extend your life by, 5 or 10 years? Maybe, if you're lucky. So all your effort can make your life a little longer, but all it takes is one mistake to cut your life off immediately. And actually, I'm laughing, but it's not a funny matter. Many people die in tragic accidents, and that's really sad, terrible. And that's what Sri Krishna is pointing out here. That no matter, even if you're like Elon Musk, the most extraordinarily gifted person in accomplishing goals in life, one thing that you can't accomplish is finding a way to escape death. It gets worse. This next verse, I've never seen this before, and it's startling. Let's see this. Konvarta sukha yatyenam, konvarta sukha yatyenam, kamo va mrityurantike, kamo va mrityurantike, aghatam niyamanasya, aghatam niyamanasya, vadhasyeva natushtidaha, vadhasyeva natushtidaha. End of the second line. Mrityuhu antike. Antike. At the end of your life, when mrityu, when death is imminent, he says, kaha nu artaha. What object, kamahava, or fulfillment of desire, what could possibly make you happy? Antike, what could possibly sukhayati enam? What could possibly bring happiness to enam, to a person? Mrityuhu antike, at the end of your life when death is imminent. Now, imagine you're at the end of your life, and I don't want to. This is grim, and so let me not try to soften it. It is just grim. At the end of your life, what do you have to look forward to? And isn't that hope for better things ahead? Isn't that one of the things that keeps us going our whole lives? Hope. Tomorrow will be better. Next week will be better. Better. Everything will be better. Use hope for the future. When you're dying, the only thing you can hope for is for the pain to end. Actually, that's a valid hope, by the way. Actually, that's a good way to soften this. It's nice it is grim, but definitely it's true. Many people die in too much pain. By the way, I understand, and I don't understand why. In India, doctors are reluctant to administer morphine to dying patients. I'm told that, and to me that's terrible. Why make a person die with tremendous pain and discomfort? Already dying is bad enough, so why not make that death easier? And in this country, there's a convention of administering morphine it relaxes the body and calms the mind so that person can die in peace. I don't know why it's not more widely practiced. Is it practiced in India? Yes. I've heard many, many times where doctors refused. Yeah? Oh, good. Well, I'm glad that that's happening more. I've heard several stories where patients were denied, and that's I think, really tragic. So, what do you have to look forward to at the end of your life? Nothing, really speaking. There's no future. There's no future accomplishments. You won't be spending more time with your family and loved ones. You won't be accomplishing anything further. That sounds pretty bad. Look at this last half of the verse. He gives a metaphor. And this is striking, and somehow I've not seen this before. I have a feeling it must come in some subhashitas and some other texts, but I've not seen this before. He says, in the last line, vadhasya eva. Eva, like vadhasya. For a man who's about to die, vadhyasya, sorry. For a man who's about to die, why? He's convicted of something and sentenced to death. He is niyamanasya, for that person who is being led, aghatam, to his execution. For a person being led to his execution, natushtidaha, nothing is going to make him feel good. What would make him feel good? The commentator says, suppose you put a mala around him and some sandalwood and do some puja and make him, will that make him feel good? What will make him feel good? Even if his wife comes and kisses and hugs him, he'll feel worse because he's going to lose her forever. So what would make that man, you can imagine, walking to the gallows, perhaps, on his way to the gallows, what would give him joy? Now, the metaphor, understood properly, is this. When you are on the precipice of death, nothing can truly give you happiness, and we are all on the precipice of death. Are we not? We don't, first of all, we don't know. We could die tomorrow. Any one of us could suffer a stroke or cardiac arrest or something. Who knows? It's entirely possible that any of us could die tomorrow. So in that way, we're on the precipice of death. And you say, no, Swamiji, I think I'm going to live for another 10, 20 years. Good. That's only 10, 20 years. That's nothing. So you're almost there. And the end is coming quickly. And if you notice, it speeds up. You've all noticed that, right? The years speed up. Year after year after year, they come and go even more quickly. So in a manner of speaking, this is as grim as it gets. We are all on the precipice of death. How can we enjoy anything at all? This is his condemnation, Sri Krishna's condemnation of being fixated on worldly happiness. And he uses some really strong language and metaphors here. What he's doing is inculcating in you an awareness of the futility of trying to find perfect peace and contentment through purely worldly pursuits. Now, if you say it's kind of exaggerated, that's the whole point. This is the literary style. In fact, they call it hyperbole, to deliberately exaggerate something for the sake of making a point. What is the point? Should be pretty clear by now. Our efforts to gain perfect peace and contentment through worldly pursuits is futile. Full stop. Means no matter how hard you try, not only will you, he doesn't make this point, but many other commentators do. The point is this: even if you are successful in getting goodies in life, the observation is twofold. One is, how much work did you exert to get all those goodies? And the second observation is, how long will you have those goodies? How long will you enjoy them? So a metaphor is, if you want this beautiful new house with a $10,000 a month mortgage, think of how hard you have to work to afford that house. Sure, it's a wonderful house. You can enjoy all those comforts and luxuries, but how hard do you have to work to enjoy that house? And then suppose you get it and it burns down the next day. This is the kind of teaching that is used to help shift our orientation. We are all by nature fixated on trying to squeeze out as much happiness and contentment out of worldly life as we possibly can. There's nothing wrong with trying to have a comfortable life, but the problem is that, what do they say? All your eggs are in one basket? Is like, that's all you can get. Why not turn your attention away from those limited worldly goals and turn towards the ultimate source of contentment and peace, which lies within. This is, in fact, I made reference to this in the meditation session. This is called dosha darshanam. This is a text in which you have the darshana, you see, you gain understanding of the dosha, the defects, the limitations of what you can accomplish in worldly life. And this sequence of verses really very poignantly shows. First of all, you are limited in your powers and resources, and you're dealing with obstacles and competition. And secondly, even if you are really smart and try to outsmart all your obstacles and limitations, you won't be completely successful. There are plenty of examples of clever people who are failures and not so clever people who are great successes. So being clever is no guarantee. And even if you are extraordinarily clever and somehow manage to do wonderfully in life, even then, what do you do about death? You are still subject to death. And this is, to me, this is really a powerful and poignant criticism of showing the defects of worldly life. It's important to make a comment here. Many Western scholars in the 1900s, when European scholars started studying Hindu teachings, many of them came to the conclusion, and the way it was often expressed, is Hinduism is a terribly pessimistic religion. This is what they wrote. Hinduism is a pessimistic religion, and you can imagine they probably read verses like these, and it's pretty pessimistic. You can't deny that. And they compared it to there's a something in Protestant Christianity where actually, I won't go. It's a little complicated and not helpful. I won't make the comparison. This certainly looks pessimistic, but dharma, artha, kama, moksha. We talk of 4 goals of life. This is talking about number 4, moksha. There are other scriptures which talk about kama. A legitimate goal of life is to fulfill your pleasures as long as you do it in a proper way. That's considered valid, legitimate. Similarly, artha, accumulating wealth for future happiness and security. These are legitimate and acknowledged goals of life, but they're different from moksha. So those Western, they called them Indologists. Those Western Indologists who accused Hinduism of being pessimistic were looking only at moksha shastra, at teachings for the sake of moksha. They somehow overlooked how many Hindu teachings are life positive. And this is terribly pessimistic, and dosha darshana is meant to be an antidote to our naive commitment to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. We'll go on in just a minute. Let me make one last observation here. You know, they say a smart people learns from his or her mistakes. Yeah? How many times have you been disappointed in your worldly efforts failing to bring you the happiness and contentment that you wanted? How many times have you been disappointed? Again and again and again. And then like that, what is it called? Those dolls which roll up? Yeah, the dal with a rounded bottom. You push the dal down, and it's weighted. It just pops up again. So it's like those dal. In fact, in Kerala, are they popular? Right? Yeah. Well, I'll call it Kerala dal. There's probably a better word for it. But you know what I'm talking about. It's a dal with a rounded bottom, and so weight in the bottom. So you push the dal over, and it immediately comes up. So most people are like those Kerala dolls. They get pushed down, meaning they try to accomplish something in life and they get disappointed, but then let me try again and try again and try again. This is the silliness, naivety of life. And that's why this language is so harsh. It is. The language is harsh because it's trying to overcome our childishness, our naiveness, if we just keep trying and trying and trying, if we don't learn from our mistakes. That's the point. Okay, now the sequence continues. Suppose, so you understand, okay, I'm limited, I have a swatantriyam, I am not free to do whatever I want. I'm not smart enough or clever enough to accomplish everything I want. And even if I were clever enough to accomplish everything I want, I still can't avoid death. This might lead you to say, okay, I'll give up on kama and artha. I'll give up on worldly pleasures and gaining wealth to sustain those worldly pleasures and focus instead on dharma. Now here, when we speak of these four goals of life, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, they need to be understood in their proper context. Here, dharma specifically means the accumulation of good karma and avoiding bad karma so that after this life, you can get reborn in some heavenly domain. And one way you may have heard me explain before, these four goals of life, kama is gaining pleasure now. Artha, wealth. Wealth is for the sake of gaining pleasure later in life, like retirement. Then dharma is for the sake of gaining pleasure still later, after this life, in the next life. So kama, artha, and dharma are all about gaining pleasure now, later, or in the next life. Moksha is completely different. Moksha is discovering that you don't need to pursue anything for the sake of contentment and inner peace. All you need to do is discover that true source within you. We'll come back to that in future verses. So here, suppose you figured out that I don't have the skills and resources to gain happiness in life, to guarantee perfect contentment and peace in life, nor do I have the even if I had some extraordinary means, I would still be subject to death. Therefore, let me give up on seeking worldly contentment and peace. Instead, let me focus on my next life. This life is useless. This is also those Indologists who thought life was pessimistic. And I have a lot I could say on that. I won't. This is not the right time. Anyway, you realize that this life, you'll realize correctly that this life will never bring you perfect peace and contentment. So therefore you decide, okay, let me dedicate my life to doing pujas and yajnas and rituals and that ritual and all of this, and I will very strictly avoid any adharmic behavior. I'll avoid accumulating papa karmas. I will accumulate punya karmas, and then some people actually go off on another thing. I want to get rid of my papa karmas, and I will get rid of them through some kind of prayashchitta, some kind of, they call it expiatory karma. Let me do some fasting, let me do some ascetic practices, let me burn off all my bad karma so I can go to heaven in the next life. And there I will enjoy happiness and contentment. Sri Krishna says, nope. And he does so in a very sarcastic way. Let's see that. Shrutam chadrishta vadushtam, shrutam chadrishta vadushtam, spardhasu yatyaya vyayaihi, spardhasu yatyaya vyayaihi, bahvantaraya kamatvat, bahvantaraya kamatvat, krishivat chapi nishpalam, krishivat chapi nishpalam. Drishtam eva shutam cha. Very terse. Drishtam is what you see around you. Drishtam eva. Like what you see in this life, suppose you consider what is not part of this life, but what is shutam. A little technical sense. What is understood through Scripture. Shrutam literally means heard, but it means heard from Scripture, and the implication is heaven. So you know about this life through your senses, like sight, drishtam. You experience this world. You don't experience heaven, but from the Scriptures you come to know of some swarga loka, some heavenly abode that your good karmas can give you. So, drishtam eva, just like this world is dushtam, has its defects, has its limitations. Remember, we use that word dosha darshanam. Dosha and dushta come from the same root. So, just like you see the defectiveness based on our prior 4 verses, just as you can understand the futility of worldly pursuits, Sri Krishna now says, Shutam cha dushtam. In the same way, you can recognize the futility of going to heaven. So he says, not only is worldly pursuits futile, even heavenly pursuits are futile. Everyone has this idea of, oh, I go to heaven and it's just perfect peace and contentment. Sri Krishna says, how do you know? Because you're up there in some heavenly domain with a lot of others who are sharing your heavenly domain with you. And I suppose, just like there might be competition here on earth, why not there's competition in heaven? In fact, when you see the Puranic stories about all the gods, the suras and asuras, they're fighting like cats and dogs. They're in a heavenly domain, right? The suras and asuras live in a heavenly domain and they go on fighting with each other. So if you think going to heaven is just so peaceful, Sri Krishna disagrees with you because he says you go to heaven where there is spardha, competition with others. So I suppose in heaven there is what did they say? There are high-end properties and low-end properties. And there's a lot of competition for those high-end properties, spardha. There's also asuya, jealousy, because you only got the medium property, and that fellow has the best real estate in all of Swarga Loka. So you have some jealousy. Also, there is vyaya and atyaya. And this is really the point. This is actually a reference to Upanishad. Vyaya means, in fact, in Hindi, vyaya means expense, right? And that's kind of the Sanskrit meaning here. Vyaya is what you have to spend to stay in heaven. And what you're spending, of course, is your good karmas. You are exhausting your good karmas day by day. Every day that you enjoy this wonderful heavenly domain, by the way, not so wonderful because of Spardha and Asuya, but anyway, you're still enjoying this heavenly, I suppose it's got to be better than this domain, this worldly domain, but still, day by day, vyaya, you are expending the good karma that allowed you to be reborn in that heavenly domain. And when your good karma is exhausted, then atyaya, death. You die in that heavenly domain to be reborn again in some other domain, which is to say, heaven is temporary, finite, limited. You've heard me comment before that the biblical traditions are so illogical if they believe that for your finite good deeds or for your faith you get to go to heaven for all eternity, and for your finite harmful deeds, bad deeds, sinful deeds, for finite sinful deeds you suffer in hell for all eternity. That is so illogical. Here we understand, for your finite good deeds, you spend a finite time in some Swarga Loka. For your finite sins, you might spend a finite, and a finite time means one lifetime. You spend one lifetime in a hellish domain. So this is Sri Krishna's his criticism of the so-called last resort. So when you come to understand worldly life will never bring me happiness and peace, let me go for the last resort. Last resort is going to heaven. Actually, in the last half, he says, even that's not likely. Look at his observation here in the second half. He says, Bahu, you have to break the words apart. Bahu antaraya kamatvat. He says, because your desire, and here specifically your desire to go to heaven, your desire to go to heaven has bahu antaraya, many obstacles. There are many obstacles lying in the way of going to heaven. So you have to do rituals, but you can't make any mistakes. You have to chant everything without making a mistake in your pronunciation. You have to make all the offerings into the ritual fires just perfectly. The flowers you offer on the altar have to be perfectly fresh. Also, this happens a lot. Some insects find their way into those flowers. You better not kill those insects, because then the value of your rituals get destroyed. And he gives a very familiar example. He says, doing all those rituals for the sake of going to heaven, he says, is krishivat api nishpalam. Just like krishiva, just like farming can sometimes be nishpalam, not bear fruits. A farmer can plow the fields, plant the seeds, and do all of that work and still not get a crop. For a variety of reasons. Sometimes insects will eat everything, birds will eat everything, the weather will not be, no rain, too much rain, wind will blow things down, too much sun, too much heat. There are so many things that can make that farmer's efforts useless. These are called antarayas, obstacles, problems. So as industrious as the farmer might be, they might not get the fruits of their work. They may not get a harvest. In the same way, no matter how dedicated you are to prayer, puja, rituals, etc., no matter how dedicated you are, there's no guarantee that it will give you that heavenly result that you seek. And this leads to we'll see just this one last verse, which is a transition now to the next topic. Oops, where are we? 22. Yes. Antarayar avvihato, antarayar avvihato, yadi dharma swanushtataha, yadi dharma swanushtataha, tenapi nirjitam sthanam, tenapi nirjitam sthanam, yatha gacchati tachrinu, yatha gacchati tachrinu. This is a nice place to end. It's a transition before this topic and what we'll see next week. In the second line, he says, yadi, suppose. From prior verse, we're talking about the person who has given up on seeking worldly happiness, and now they've dedicated themselves to religious practices for the sake of going to heaven in the next lifetime. So Sri Krishna talks about such a person. He says, yadi, if dharmaha, if their religious rituals, in this context, if their religious rituals are swanushtitaha, su-anushtitaha, well performed. Suppose they do all the rituals perfectly. Then, in the first line, antarayaihi avihataha. They are avihataha. They are not impeded, antarayaihi, by obstacles. They've done everything perfectly, by the book, as they say. All these rituals have been done properly, so there will be no obstacles. They accumulate all the punya karma they need to reach heaven. They avoid all papa karmas. And Sri Krishna says, yatha, in the last line, the manner in which tena, by the in the third line, tena api, by the performance of all those rituals, the manner in which gacchati, they will reach nirjitam sthanam, that sthana, that loka, that heavenly abode, which is nirjitam, acquired by them, the way in which they can accomplish that and reach that heavenly abode, if they do the rituals perfectly, Sri Krishna says, even that has some problems. He says, Tatrinu, listen. So he's going to, in the next series of verses, talk about the shortcomings of a purely religious life. Most of you understand the huge difference between religion and spirituality. Religion is based on faith. Religion is based on the performance. This is a definition, not the only definition, but suppose we compare performing rituals based on faith, you compare that to pursuing spiritual growth based on scriptural wisdom. We can all appreciate the huge gap between those two approaches to life. So here Sri Krishna is going to further criticize that narrowly religious life, a life that excludes focus on spiritual growth. And we'll see that in our next class. Okay, quick announcements. Tomorrow we have our Upadesha Sahasri class, brilliant teachings of Sri Shankaracharya, followed, that's at 10 o'clock tomorrow, followed by, at 11 o'clock by satsang. I, it's, we're going to try something new tomorrow at satsang. We're going to try live streaming that satsang. I think when the pandemic started and we went online, we tried doing things live for a while and had a number of problems, and we gave up. I gave up. I think the problems are resolved, and so we'll give it a try again several years later. So tomorrow we will be our first live streamed satsang. Of course, you live nearby. You can come here and participate. This is really meant for all of our students living wherever they live, so please come. So those of you who are here locally, please join us at 11. And those of you who are watching online, please join our live stream tomorrow at 11 o'clock. And with that, we can conclude with our prayers at the altar. Om Gananahan Tva Ganapatigam Havamahe Kaving Kavidam Upamashravastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspatahana Shranvan Uttavasira Saranam Om Mahaganapataye Namaha Ishvaro Gururhatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramhanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschad Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.